Somebody brought the new ones, but look at home. Got two left. Good. Agbawa, Panyuwa Jerusalem, Stand Face Jerusalem. Blessing of the new moon. Barakata Yahweh Bashan Yahweh Shai Ashered Atan Lanawa HaKadash Bashalawam Tawada Aman
Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the new moon in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Ali Ma'ashrai Machat, Psalms 121. Gabar, read everything, Bob Shah. Anya Harayam Ayam Yamya Oh Harayam Mayan Yabawa Zarya Yabawa Mayahawa Shamayam Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Shashramarka Hanela Yanawam Wala Yashan Shashramar Yashrele Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayo Yad Yim Yad Yawamam Hashamash La Kaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makam Rai Yashamar Napasha Yahweh Yashamar Habalakya Wabawa Aya My Fa Wa I Walam Basham Yahweh Shai for what Amen.
Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep.
The whole song.
The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore.
I'm going to say Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharella, hero of Israel, Deuteronomy 6:4. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt
Just
love
say Amen. That's it.
Amen.
You can say Amen. Amen. Tapalaya Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6:9. Abinawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Hayya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malakwavka, Taba'a, Rotazawanka, Hayya, Aisha, Barataza, Kabashemayim, Nathan Lanawa, Lacham, Yawam, Zad, Wasalak Lanawa, Kabawap Nawa. Kasalak nawa, kabawat yanawa, wala abiyar nawa, oh nasayawan, abo hawashai nawa, murai, kayan, laka, hamalakwa, wa ala, wa thapara, wa walam, maman.
Matthew 6:9. After this manner, therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai Sharama Tazawab, the Ten Commandments. Exodus 20 and 3. La'ab, Yahayab, Lakab, Alahayim, Akarim, Alpanyab, La'ab, Thaishad, Lakab, Pasol, Wala'ab, Thaibadam, La'ab, Talakwakath, Shamwab, Yahawab, Alahayakab, Lashawat, Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabath, Lakodashwad, Kabad, Abiyakab, Wa Amakab, La'at, Theratazak, La'at, Tanaap, La'at, Taganab, La'at, Ta'ainad, Shakur, La'at, Takhamad, Ko, Asherat, Lara'ikab, Amen.
Ten Commandments. Exodus 20 and 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generations of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
That's it. Say Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Yeshua, be seated. Tell them what tongue it is. Barakathi Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Asharana Tananawa, Parya Gapan Thuata Aman. La Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Ath Yashar Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of divine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Ahmad Wa, playing the Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatha Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyad, Wanawa'ad, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shemayim, Waratazad, Wakal, Dabarim, Kayayim, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Hapala, Yawaitazad, Yahawashad, Zakarnawa, Yahwa, Baratazawan, Ainka, Yash'alat, Izarnawa, Banat, Wasap, Yash'alat, Al, Nanawa, Yamyan, Aithad, Kayawamyam, Makwadam, Babakushad, Shalak, Maika Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Maganawa, Raparnawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Baikor, Shalak, Haroka, Shal, Yahawashai, Lanawa, Lalamadnawa, Rabiam, Kakamad, Tabawana, Wada Shal, Tabarka, Basham, Yahawashai, Thawada, Thumyad, Waiwalam, Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember Yahweh favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us, to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Hatawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Aweth. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korab, Ha'aim, Yishabra. You see that? Just make sure that door is locked too.
Say what?
Yeah, keep the brother in prayer. He can open the blinds too. Yeah. Keep the brother in prayer. It's funny because, I guess he thought he was just coming through randomly.
Yeah.
Then he stumbled on a holy day.
You got to be so ready to move. My Lord.
He said, Shalom.
Shalom.
Truth is reciprocal, right? You get what you put in. And Most High is an even and just God, It's like you got first place, you got second place, third place, fourth place. You get the participation award, right? Got the door prize, So it's up to us to decide which one, right? right. So, Shalom Yasharala. So, Shalom, everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom, everyone listening on teleconference. And Shalom, everyone watching on live stream. Welcome to Hayat Charlotte Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where what? We teach that the so-called Black, Latin, and Native Americans are the 12 tribes of Israel, once lost, now found, and that we have fallen to a lower state politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God, found the Bible given to us by Moses. And that we come out of this lower state that we've fallen to by turning back to the commandments we broke, by following Jesus Christ as our example, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. One way we do that is by keeping the holy days of the Lord, namely the new moon. That's what we're keeping tonight. So we'll touch on a couple new moon verses, and then I want to share a couple verses. We won't be too long tonight, so that we don't go too late, given that we had a late start, unfortunately. But it's good to be with the family, not only over the phone, but in person. But what we'll do is, since I know you brothers have both had your time to what? Bring out new moon, right? Bring out new moon scriptures at least once. Between the two of you, let's have three for each of you, and you guys can go back and forth. But new moon scriptures of your choice, and then if you could, give the sense and cause us to understand the reading. Either one of you could start first.
You want to take the floor down?
I got Genesis 14:19. Genesis 14:19 says.
Hold on. So this is a new moon scripture that you're pulling for us? Okay, just double check. And also, before you say that, let me also say this too. If you don't know already, my name is Nabia Zerbabal, and just make sure that for your notes, you just put down that according to our calendar, well, according to the Gregorian calendar rather, it's September 6th, 2021, but according to our calendar, it's the 6th month and the first day. Like the elders shared last Sabbath service, some camps might be keeping their 7th month now, but what we thought about back then when trying to figure out when to pinpoint the Passover, we had it come later, the next following new moon, so that the holy days could fall within their proper seasons. So going forward, each time we do a holy day calendar for the whole year, we always want to make sure, based on the seasons, that what we have the holy days always come within their proper season, and let that decide whether or not we have a 13th month or not in the year, to make sure everything lines up. You gonna do rock, paper, scissors?
Okay, Psalm 104:19.
All right. And make sure you project your voice so that you can be heard. And actually, that might be a good idea if you want to, probably right there. If your voice doesn't project.
Psalms 109, verse 19.
104.
104, excuse me, yeah. 104, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
He appointed the moon for the season. The sun knoweth is going down, which means that he appointed the moon for the season. He lets us know. He's appointed the moon for the seasons. Another way of saying that
They appointed the moon for the season. That's all it is.
he appointed the moon for the season.
So it's season.
We know what season is by the moon.
Take your time, brother.
I couldn't remember this. He appointed the moon for the seasons. The
Mhm.
sun knoweth is going down. In other words, the moon is appointed for the season. We know what time of the year it is by the moon. We know the time of the year is by the moon. Each season has a way identified by spring, fall, by how much I guess by the moon would be said. I could get a better explanation, but I can't seem to think of the proper context in which to put it in. But I believe that's what it is. And the sun it goes from day to day. The sun works similar to the moon because you can always tell the time of the year it is by the way in which the sun it faces the earth. Like say for example, if it's a more warmer, like the springtime of the year, the sun comes up at a certain time and it goes down a little bit later. As the season changes, the sun stays up more higher as the days go on.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my best explanation for that.
Right. And how does the moon show us seasons?
How does the moon show seasons? By the you would say by the quarter, the half, and
what are those called?
Huh?
And what are those called? What are those examples of the quarter and the half?
the quarter and a half. In other words, you see, oh man, I don't know why. Please forgive me.
They're called something of the moon. The moon goes through its what?
Shades or quarter moon, half moon.
Not shades, but what am I thinking of, Gabar?
Say that question again.
He said the quarter and the half, right? So those are examples of what? Of the moon.
Different times of the month.
Right, but they're called something of the moon.
Phases.
There you go.
There you go, phases. Right.
There you go.
The
So when it talks,
phases of the moon, yeah.
right, so when it says he appointed the moon for seasons, that's how he did it. So by observing the phases, like you said, we know what time of month that we're in. And then by counting the months, each time we get a new moon like we have now, we know we're a month further in the year. By counting the months, we can say, oh, okay, we're in the spring season, we're in the summer season, fall season, etc.
Yeah.
Come, 12. All right, and Gabar, if you may, can you provide another verse for us to edify us on the moon?
Let's, we're going to 1 Samuel, chapter 20 and verse 5.
All right, that's good. All right, water. Just for folks that are watching and listening, just always remember Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse 8, right? Which is what we should always be able to do. That's what we did back then when we were coming back into Jerusalem and coming back into Israel after being in captivity. It tells you that what? The teachers at that time, it says they read in the book of the law distinctly, and it says how they gave the sense and cause them to understand the reading, right? Meaning the people. So they read the verses, right? Because, we've been in captivity for a while, so we have forgotten some things. So they read the verses, and then they what? Gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. In other words, they broke it down. So that's what we want to be able to do anytime we show what we know to our brother or sister that doesn't know, right? Whether it be a family member, a friend, an associate, we want to be able to break it down. Now, we talked about in past classes, and like we will continue to talk about, a key way to do that, where you don't over talk the verse, but you cover everything that's essential to the verse. Always just look at like we talk about the W's, right? That we ask, at least in English. It might be the Q's in Spanish, right? But the interrogative questions that we ask based on the verse. First, we always want to ask what? Who's the verse talking about? Or who's talking in the verse? We want to ask what's happening in the verse, right? Then secondarily, we want to look at where does the verse take place and when does it take place to get a little more historical background. And then finally, you want to find out why these things are happening in a verse and then how these things are taking place, right? Which from a righteous standpoint, usually the why is because it's the Most High's will. That's the ultimate why, right? When it comes to the event of the scriptures. But now, when it pertains to us or other nations, usually the why is what? Either obedience to his law or transgression of the law. That'll be the reason why we fall or another nation falls, or we rise up or another nation rises up. But yeah, if you can cover those W's when you read a verse, you pretty much covered the verse. But I have 1 Samuel 20:5. I'm not sure if you have it, Yakazak, do you? You have it as well?
Samuel 8:5.
20 and 5, 1 Samuel.
So yeah, just remember that. And that the parables of Christ tell us or emphasize why asking those questions are important when it comes to understanding matters, whether it's in the scriptures or just anything that's happening, current events, because even current events, you can tie back to the prophecy in the scriptures.
That sounds good, though.
First Samuel 20:5.
20 and 5.
No.
All right. 1 Samuel 20 and 5. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king and meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at evening. All right. This is talking about David, Israel, and Saul celebrating the new moon. But at this point in time, David was hiding from Saul because Saul wanted to kill him. Mm-hmm. So he didn't go to celebrate the new moon until the third day. He didn't come in on the first day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You said Israel. You meant like the nation of Israel? Or were you referring to Jonathan?
What did I say again?
You said David, Saul, and Israel. Were you talking about the nation, or were you referring to Jonathan?
I was referring to the nation.
Okay.
They celebrated the new moon. But Saul was trying to kill David, so David didn't want to go and celebrate it on the first day. He said he'll be there by the third day.
Okay. All right. Is that it?
Yeah, that was it for that verse.
All right. So you want to jump down to 24.
24.
And then
All right,
Break-
this is 1 Samuel 20 and 24.
down to 27.
Okay. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. And it came to pass.
You're not going to give the sense, or you're going to give it at the end?
Okay, I'll give a sense for each verse, right? Where I started, 24.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 24. All right, so it says David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. Okay, we already said in verse 5 that Saul was trying to kill David. So he couldn't go to Saul's table to celebrate the new moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it says, so David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat. So Saul sat down to eat, okay? And we know that David was hiding somewhere. So 25, and the king sat upon his seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall, and Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. So they said everybody was there at the king's table except David.
Mm-hmm.
All right, verse 26. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. Okay, so Saul didn't say nothing about David being missing at his table. He just figured that David ain't clean. That's why he ain't there.
Right.
All right, 27.
What does it mean to be, real quick, when it says being clean? If I'm someone in the world,
Okay.
does that mean, oh, David must have not had a shower. He must have been exercising, right? Sweating.
Right.
Well,
That was
working
somebody
on
in the
there.
world would think.
So when it says he's not clean, what's that mean?
There are different ways to be not clean. If you go to a funeral and you're not clean for 7 days, that's what we call unclean.
Oh, okay.
If you touch a dead animal carcass, then you're not clean. So that's just two forms of ways of being not clean. There's other ways too.
Okay.
I just gave you those two, meaning that you ain't clean.
Gotcha. The water.
27.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? Okay, now this is the second day of the new moon. And Saul's really starting to be worried where David is. So he asked his son, because he knew his son and David was real cool. So he wanted to know where's David at.
Come. To up. Only thing I would probably add on when you read the previous verse, 26, when you give the overview about unclean, that's good if you're bringing this down for somebody. You don't necessarily go into a full deep dive of uncleanness. You can give them basics, but then just make sure that you make sure it's clear to the person that, because it can be implied by what we read, just make sure they clearly understand whatever the reason that we are unclean, we're not supposed to gather together for a holy convocation. Only when we're clean according to the law. Because you say, oh, okay, they're not clean, so why would it matter? But that's still a point. He's not coming because he's unclean. So someone who has no idea about uncleanness, you may have showed them what it is, but why he's not coming still may not be clear. So just make sure you emphasize that.
Oh, okay.
But outside of that, spectacular. So, Yakazakala, if you could give us another new moon verse. All right. So Amos 8 and 5. Come.
Amos 8 and 5. Saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn.
Actually, it's better if you start at verse 4.
Start at verse 4.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 4, yeah, it's marked up. Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail. Saying, when will the new what's up here? It says, first off, that they wanted to swallow up the needy. In other words, they wanted to take advantage of the poor.
Come. I'm not sure we can hear you. Try to raise your voice a little bit. We'll get closer.
Okay. They wanted to take advantage of the poor. They wanted to see them fed. You know, they wanted them to fall into a more or less more decrepit state than they might have already been in. And they wanted the land to fed. They wanted the land to fed. They didn't want to see any growth.
Mm-hmm.
Even to make the poor of the land to fed. So they seemed that they didn't want the growth in this verse right here. Saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn in the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, falsifying the balances by deceit. In other words, it seems to here they wanted to take advantage of people. They wanted the new moon to be gone because they wanted to say, man, let's get this stuff out the way because we want to go back to our cheating and stealing. We want to rob people.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they want to rob people. They want to overcharge the folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to take advantage of the poor, like they do today. They want to charge you a little more than what you're supposed to pay for things. You know, things are actually cheaper, but in the neighborhood, they have a tendency to want us to pay more for the same merchandise.
Come.
Yeah. So they wanted the new moon to be gone because they knew that the new moon was a sacred day, was a day that was a holy day, and they wanted to just take advantage of it. That's basically what it came
Mm-hmm. And why did they have to wait for the new moon to be gone to sell corn?
because they wanted to go back to their buying and selling. Because they wanted to buy and sell. Basically, what it comes down, they wanted to buy and sell.
So why not just buy and sell on the new moon?
Say it again?
Why not just buy and sell on the new moon?
Well, the new moon is a sacred day.
Oh, okay.
And they recognized it as a sacred day. At that time, when people, they more or less, they followed the ways of the Lord. And they didn't want to put themselves in jeopardy.
Put yourself in jeopardy.
Yeah, in other words, you could, things could happen to you. But if they caught a violation.
Okay.
And they felt they could be violated. They understood as much ago that could be a violation. So they wanted it to be gone. They wanted that to be over with so they could go back to doing what they were doing. And that was cheating.
Okay.
Falsifying the balances, and putting, extra weight on it to make it higher than it was.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically just getting over it. It was crooks, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I asked, just to make sure, because I'm always trying to come from a place of someone has no idea, right? That's why I asked, well, what's the big deal? Why not just do it on the new moon? And like you said, it's a sacred day. Now, you know what sacred means. Just make sure you clarify for the person, too. The way that it was, one way that it was sacred, one thing the Most High had was what? We couldn't do our own commerce, buying and selling, on his new moon or on his Sabbath day. You just put it out there like that. And, and if they have a question about that, you can take them somewhere else to show, but this is just one example. And then you also want to touch on, unless you had something else you wanted to say, was that it?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, because you also want to, you explain what's going on, but just make sure that they understand what an ephah is. They probably haven't seen that word before. And they understand what shekel is. What you said was good, right? You said, yeah, they're trying to swindle them, right? They're trying to get over on them. They're trying to overcharge. But just make sure when it says ephah, right? who or which is an ephah? Who or which is a shekel? You say ephah is dealing with what? An amount of something, right? Like a volume of something. Whereas the shekel is dealing with what? Price, how much something costs, right? So we talk about the W's, right? That's your how many or how much, right? So you get your how many, which is like your quantity, right? Your volume. And you have how much, which is how much you pay per volume. And we see that, like you said, even today with the heathen and how they'll set up. We don't own a school market, right? Even if we do, just to compete, we'll be forced to what? Try to do underhanded things, right? Where you'll see the unit price will be this for this, this particular product, but then it might be less if you get more of it, right? So you say, okay, if I buy it in bulk or buy a bigger, quantity, my hope is that I can get it for cheaper as far as each unit, whether it be like an ounce or, whatever the weight is, if it's talking about its weight or how much volume it takes up. So the key is trying to get as much as you can per unit price. Here they were twisting that. So just say shekels just deals with how much you're getting, like ounces or volume, and then ephah is dealing with how much you're getting, like volume amount, and then shekel is dealing with how much it's costing. And then once you clarify that, then it'll make the scripture crystal clear. All right, Tawab. So, Gabar, Baba Kasha, you can edify us on another verse.
All right, let's go to the Apocrypha.
All right.
The book of the Ecclesiasticus. That's chapter 43.
Ecclesiasticus 43.
Verse 6.
Okay.
All right. It says, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. All right, let's look at that. So it says he made the moon to serve in her seasons. So we already, Brother Daniel, Brother Yakazakala, had already told us about the moon and the seasons. Different phases of the moon, and different moons have to do with different months. And depending on what month it is also going to tell you the different seasons. And we know there's like 4 seasons, right? Spring, winter, summer, and fall, which will never fail.
Right.
Okay. So it says he made the moon to serve in her seasons, declaring what time it is. So, after 12 moons, that's a whole year that went by, right? A sign of the world. Okay, the whole world will see the moon.
Come.
Okay, verse 7. From the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreases in her perfection. Right? So we know we associate different feast days with different moons. Okay? And it says a light that decreases in her perfection. In other words, the moon is not as bright as the sun. It appears to be decreasing, and is perfect in doing that. Okay, verse 8.
Right, and real quick, and that's true that the moon is a lesser light, but when it says it decreases, what's that specifically talking about? Right. It was actually a question I asked him, but you were actually able to answer it.
What did he say?
So you answered the question, remember? That I asked him. That's what he's saying.
when I asked.
Remember, I asked him a question when he was reading the breaking down the last verse, and I asked him, "It's something of the moon," and then I said, "Wait, do you know what it is?" And you had the right answer.
Oh, the phases?
Right,
Oh, that's a decreasing number.
right. That's what it's talking about. Because from the middle of the month or the full moon, the moon decreases as far as its light, and that's what they call waning. And when you're about to read in the next verse, the opposite, which is from this time leading up to the middle of the month or the full moon, the moon's going to wax. But from,
Wax mean increase?
right. So the moon waxes and wanes. So it waxes. That means from the new moon to the full moon, that's when the light begins to increase from the right side going towards the left. And what you read is talking about from the middle of the month to the end, it decreaseth in her perfection. In other words, it wanes. So you'll see it start to get dark from the right side and keep going. Like you were said earlier, it'll be a half, then it'll be a quarter, right? And then finally, we'll be back to another new moon. So that's what it means when it says decreaseth. But you can show us number or verse 8 now.
It says, the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. So the month is called after her name, I guess moon month.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing wonderfully in her changing. Like when we have a new moon, you can't see anything. And then as the days go on in that month, it becomes a full moon. By the time it gets to the middle of the month, it's a half a moon.
Come.
I'm sorry, a full moon.
Come.
By the time it gets to the middle of the month.
Come.
And then it says, being an instrument of the armies above. Now, I guess the armies will be referring to the stars,
Come. That's right.
or the planets, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Shining in the firmament.
Come. To what? Yep. That was good. You mentioned the planets too. Yeah, it's just the heavenly host, referring to them all that are up there, which includes the planets. Real quick, because I don't know if we read this one. It might have been a while since we read it, but you can go to this verse real quick that actually mentions planets. 2 Kings chapter 23. 2 Kings chapter 23. And verse 5. I'll just read it real quick. Just say a come once you have it.
What is it?
2 Kings 23. I'm going to read verse 5. Just say come once you have it.
2 Kings.
Chapter 23 and verse 5. You have it too, Gabar?
No.
Okay. So 2 Kings 23 and 5, right? So it reads, and he put down the idolatrous priests, right? So let me start off. Who, right? Who's this he? You read above, it's talking about King Josiah, right? One of our righteous kings of the kingdom of Judah, which was the southern kingdom. Unfortunately, you only had 3 kings that actually stayed the right course, right? Josiah being one of those 3. So it says, he put down the idolatrous priest whom the kings of Judah had ordained, right? So the priests are dealing with what? The sons of Aaron, because that their family is responsible for being priests. But it says they were idolatrous, meaning what? The priest, before he came into power, the king before him, his father, had allowed them to what? Deal with idols, which is not good, right? Whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places, like we were burning incense earlier. I'm not sure if folks who are watching on the live stream, you probably could see some of the incense coming, right? Because the way the wind was blowing, the way the air is moving in here. But we were burning the incense like the priest did before. In the high places, these high places, you read in other scriptures, is referring to these places of high elevation where we would set up idols, right? To these false gods that other nations dealt with, which the Most High hated that we did. Like you read earlier, Gabar, in the prayers, thou shalt know the gods before me, right? It says, where did they do it? In the cities of Judah and in the places round about Jerusalem. So in the cities of Judah and in Jerusalem itself, the capital city, that's where they did this. Them also, right? Those same priests, what did they do? They burnt incense unto Baal. See that? Now, Baal, that name just translates loosely into Lord. But Baal was a very famous idol, right? That the Hamites used to deal with, right? And I wouldn't even be surprised. In some places in what they call Africa today, they probably have still some sort of semblance of serving men. Esau comes in a lot and whitewashes the religion, but you'll see Ham and other dark nations still keep their ancient practices intact. So yeah, they were dealing with Baal, which that's a false god. It says what? They burned it to Baal and who else? The sun. It says and to the moon. Then it says and to the planets. Then it says and to all the hosts of heaven. So they had idols that they associated with different heavenly bodies. Right? That's like what we see even with, you see Esau doing it now, but they took this from the Hamites, right? And they renamed it, right? They looked at the constellations and they said, oh, that right there, that's supposed to be Orion, right? The Titan. It's supposed to be, Thor riding across his chariot, right? Or, depending on what culture you're looking at, they'll look at the host of heaven and try to associate those things, and they call it anthropomorphize, meaning what? You're giving animal human-like qualities, right? As far as the shape, you're attaching a shape to these arrangements of stars. So that's where you get your what we call constellations today. So it's like a visual way of remembering a different spot in the sky. You see the way that the stars are arranged. So before we did this through the Greeks and the Romans, because most horoscopes and people who deal with the zodiac now, they base it on what the Greeks and Romans called them, right? Like Aries or Capricorn or Sagittarius. The other cultures like the Hamites, the Moabites, other nations, Elamites, they did the same thing. Just had different assignments, different names for the as far as how they arranged the stars. But they did it according to wickedness, not according to righteousness, because like we talk about in other places, you find that the Most High had the spirit on us. You see how he blessed, you read in this particular how he blessed Issachar, where he had this knowledge, right? And that's why even to this day, when it comes to Issachar and Zebulun, their calendar is still meditated on, right? Before the conquistadors came to Central America, they still meditate on how accurate the Aztec calendar was, or how the Mayan calendar was, because Issachar and Zebulun used to visit each other, right? Ancient times before Esau came to what they now call the New World, and they would celebrate different festivals. First, they were going the righteous way, and then as time went on, they started going off. That's where you see like the depictions on the walls of them, cutting out your heart, and, sacrificing kids to some idol in the sky. So they end up going off. They didn't start that way, but they ended up going off and following the ways of the heathen that they were under before they came over on boats. But yeah, we were doing that before you even had the Greeks or the Romans coming to power during this time of Josiah. But yeah, I want to read that verse to show us going off and just showing in the Bible how you see planets mentioned. All right. So I think that should do as far as a new moon script. I'll just have you guys go into 2 since we've already kind of spent an hour. But let me just touch on these verses 2 real quick, because we know what a hot item we see in the news is what? Afghanistan, right? So something we always want to stress. And we talk about it in the classes, but you always want to be mindful of it because it gives you insight into knowing the people that are around you. You know, you want to be able to pinpoint the different nations, right? It's a milk topic, right? Nationality, but it's very important, right? To know our nation, to know the nations that are around us, right? The basics. What are they serving, and where's that gonna lead them, and what's their relationship to us, right? We got scriptures that show us, oh, they're our enemies. Why? Because they're God's enemies. They don't serve the true living God. They serve idols. And many of our people serve idols too, which now makes us at odds too. Like we talk about being a Gentile, right? Or being considered a heathen or a stranger. Now, your ancestry on your father's side goes back to Israel, but you're considered a stranger, a Gentile, because you're following the strange ways of these other nations. So when we talk about Esau, right, the key thing we always want to be able to pinpoint, because they'll make it seem real complicated on the news. They'll say, these are complex geopolitical issues, right? Geopolitics, right? When you hear that, you go, oh, man. Geopolitics, diplomacy, right? But now, scriptures make it real clear, because Esau and our father Jacob, we share a common father in Isaac, right? And a common mother in Rebekah. Isaac told Esau what he would do and how he would be when he came to thrive in the earth, because at this time he was just a man. And Jacob was just a man too. He hadn't had any kids yet, or did Esau. But Isaac gave him a prophecy about what he would do in the future. So real quick, go to Genesis chapter 27. Because once you know the different nations, right, and know what the Most High made them to be and the way that he blessed them, right, we can pinpoint who the nations are today and say, oh, yeah, that is that nation, right? Yeah, they call themselves this now, but this has to be them in the Bible, because the same characteristics the Most High said that they would have, they're doing it, right? They exhibit that. So anytime you hear folks talk about, domestic issues, whether it be, police or even foreign policy when it comes to, our military and how they operate overseas, just remember this. Genesis 27, I'm going to read 39 and 40. And I think you probably remember this, Yakazak, right? Because we read this in the class not too long ago, right? So this is Genesis 27, 39. You just say come once you have it. So Genesis 27, 39. It says, and Isaac, his father, when you read above the his, is talking about Esau. When you read in the previous verse. Answered and said unto him, talking to Esau, behold, thy dwelling, meaning Esau's dwelling, shall what? Be the fatness of the earth, right? So going to what? His dwelling being the fatness of the earth, meaning what? The resources. Showing there's going to come a time when Esau, when he is the predominant in the earth, he's going to have that access to all the resources in the earth, right? Going into him spreading out, right? Then it says, and of the dew of heaven from above. So that's going into what? Like we see in other places pertaining to our brother Esau, right? Like in Obadiah, it talks about them what? Sitting in the nest among the stars. This coincides with that too. So that's a distinguishing factor that what? Shows Esau going up into space. Yeah, now you got other nations that have technology that are sending satellites and stuff like that up there too. But who are the ones that kickstarted that, right? Esau as Gog Magog, what we call Russia today, and Esau, what we call America, right? So the two main countries, right, that we see went into space first to fulfill that prophecy. So people say, oh, it's the white man's book. But why are they following it to a T? Why didn't they change it up? Why didn't they offset the prophecy? But when you read the scriptures with understanding, you see they fulfill the prophecy to a T. So they don't have as much power as you think. But then check out verse 40. And by thy sword, Esau's sword, shalt thou live. It says, and shalt serve thy brother, right? This talking about us, Jacob. Because they're going to serve us first, which they did in times past, right? We were the top empire, our golden age, which is like around 1000 BC, right? Which was during the time of David and Solomon. So by thy sword thou shalt live. So this is important. They live by the sword. In other words, what? What's the sword used for? To kill? Right. You guys got both. You guys got both the answers. It can be used to kill. It also can be used to divide. In the class we were going into, right? We went into in the Gospels, right? Where one gospel, Christ says, "Think not that I come to send peace," right? I came to send peace, but a sword. Then the other verse, the other gospel says, I came to bring peace, but rather division. Showing that sword can also represent division too. Then it goes into the prophecy about our families being split up, right? Now you may say, well, what's Esau got to do with that? But through their doctrine that they raised us up in, right? Us, our parents, going back to when we were first brought over here, you see that what? They're the culprits of what? Pushing lies instead of telling us the truth about the Bible, right? Because the truth wasn't given to them to teach. So how could they teach it to us? It only makes sense, what? Them teaching us something that would, what? Help them out. As wicked as it may be, but that's what they did. They gave us a false Christ that looks like them, not the actual Christ that looks like us with dark skin, woolly hair, etc., etc. So by the sword you shall live. So they did that to us, the 12 tribes of Israel, especially in North America. You see them doing it to Judah. You see them doing it to Gad and Reuben, right? As far as the so-called Native Americans. They're called the First Nations. You go up to Canada. But you see evidence of that, and it's even illustrated in, they call it an apocryphal book, but they say the William Lynch letter. We don't know if it's true. Okay, you can say that about a lot of books. But now if I read it, if I look around me and use my observation and see those same tools being used, I have to what? Give it some kind of credence, because you want to say a book's not real. Somebody apparently thought it was a good idea and to employ these principles. Because what did it say in that book? It says we're going to divide them, right? The old against the young, the men against the women, the parents against the kids, the light skin against the dark skin, right? Creating like a caste, if you will, a caste system, if you will, when it came to keeping us in captivity, subjugating us through divide and conquer. So when you look at Esau here and what he's done here and what he's doing overseas in other countries, like Afghanistan is like the hot item, but it's not just there. You know, they're messing with they're messing around in Yemen, they're messing around in Syria, they're messing around, they were messing around in Iraq and other places too. And we know Iran is like a hot item too, and it will get even hotter because they're going to play an important role leading up to this third world war that's coming. So that's their calling card. By the sword they shall live, which represents what? Division. To prove that, hold this real quick, verse 40. And I referred to him earlier, but link this just to show that the sword represents division when you show this to someone else. Matthew 10. Matthew chapter 10. And 34. Let me get Yakazak. Let me get you to read that one. And then Gabar. And in Gabar, I want you, after we read that, I'll have you get the next one.
Matthew 10, verse 34. Think not that I come to send peace on earth. I come not to send peace, but a sword. For I come to set a man.
Oh, you can stop there. So Christ is saying what? I came to send peace but a sword. Remember, Christ is over everything, right? Even over the other nations. So he's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right? On all levels of heaven, right? First, second, and third. It's just he's not recognized as the ruler here yet. But that's where our job comes in, to what? War in the service of God, so that they have the knowledge of God written in their foreheads, not the knowledge of the world. But now, if you could, Gabar, read Luke 12 and 51. Luke chapter 12 and verse 51. It's the same instance, but look at what the wording that's used here. That's why it's beautiful to read the Gospels together. Because you read them together, you get the full picture of what took place. The metaphor we always use is like watching competitive sports, and you're not sure if a play was out of bounds, right? They got one camera. It's hard to tell. And you got another camera that's on the side, or a camera that's in the end zone, right? You take all the cameras together, you get a full picture of what happened on the play. So the Gospels work the same way. When you read a story during that time in multiple Gospels, you read them together, you get a full picture of what's going on. So Luke 12 and 51, Baba Kushan. Yes.
You got that, Yakuza? Okay. Suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth. I tell you, nay, but rather division.
Right. So here it says division. The other place it says the sword. So showing us that what? It represents both, right? It can represent both. But now back in Genesis 27, let me read the rest of verse 40. So it says, and by thy sword shalt thou live, right? And shalt serve thy brother, referring to us, Jacob, and referring to when what? We had the predominance in the earth during the time of the reign of David and Solomon, what was considered our golden age, right? And I'll get this one real quick just to show that we had them in power, or we had ruled over them, because it's hard for us to even picture that, right? There was a time when we actually had the white man in chains. He was a slave unto us. That could have never been, right? We're just so used to them being in power. That's all we know in this modern era. But nope, it wasn't always like that. But yeah, this is 2 Samuel. Second Samuel, I'm going to go to chapter 8. Chapter 8 and verse 14. So 2 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 14. I'll read this. Just say come once you have it. So 2 Samuel's 8 and 14, it says, and he, you read above that he is David. What did he do? He put garrisons in Edom. Who's Edom? Esau. Esau is Edom, right? It tells you that in Genesis 36 when it goes into their family tree, right? Throughout all Edom, he put garrisons, right? Which are like what today, what the Esau does with embassies, right? Right? They go into a country, they'll have an embassy, right? And or an army base, right? To quote unquote keep the peace, to say, all right, you guys acknowledge our authority here. And, you know, if you guys have any issue or any help, need any help, you go to our embassy to, you know, make certain requests, and et cetera, et cetera. Because once America comes in, they become the new boss, and they're supposed to protect them from outside invaders at that point. To say, yeah, you're part of our government now, don't worry, right? But we know it doesn't always go down that way. So we did the same thing. We just called them garrisons. We put like an outpost in the countries that we conquered. So it says he put garrisons, and all they of Edom became David's servants. See that? And it says, and Yahweh preserved David whithersoever he went. Yahweh is how you say the Lord, all caps, in the ancient Hebrew. He preserved David where? Whithersoever he went. And it wasn't just them, it was all the nations too, as you read above and read below. Just an example, you can show them that. So, because sometimes, and I've seen this, and we had that discussion in the class, when we were reading Serve Thy Brother, your first thought was, oh, it's talking about us serving them. But no, it was talking about them serving us. Remember? I was asking you who the brother is, and you were saying, that's us serving Esau, right? And I'm like, no, you got to flip it. That's why it says, going back to Genesis 27, verse 40 again, Genesis 27 and 40, and by thy sword shalt thou live. This is Isaac talking to Esau. You should live by the sword. This says, and shall serve thy brother, meaning us. Because Isaac had two sons, Esau and Jacob, us being the younger. Then it says, it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, meaning there's going to come a time after that time when Jacob has rule over you, after the time of David and Solomon, right? When you, Esau, shall have dominion, that what are you going to do? Thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. You're going to break the yoke that Jacob put on you off of your neck when you come into power, when it's your time to reign. Which you pretty much have seen from the time of Greece up until now, save, the time of the Dark Ages when they fell out of favor for a time. And once the Dark Ages ended, as the prophecy said, they would come back into power. Cotton says 27, 39 and 40 about them living by the sword. That's a key thing to know when we look at Esau, what they do domestically to us and the other tribes, and what they do overseas to the other dark nations, and hell, even other Edomites in other countries. But you'll see they always slow their roll when it comes to Russia or anybody Russia's behind, right? They say, oh, I don't want to fight with Russia, right? Because, they can match us muscle for muscle. See, America's a bully, right? They'll go in a country they know they can get advantage of. But then a country that's got backing from Russia, they'll use the old trick carefully. And they'll use what they call proxy. They'll have a proxy war, right? They'll say, okay, we're going to get people in this country on our side. You guys, you have your people on your side, and then we'll just fight each other through these proxies, right? Like you playing chess with chess pieces, right? But they know not to mess with Russia because that's what you have. They made a movie about it. What's that guy who writes the books about the Edomite? He's kind of like the American version of James Bond. Harrison Ford. Those Harrison Ford movies from Jack Ryan. The Jack Ryan movies. Like Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games. Remember those kind of movies? It was like spy thrillers. So Jack Ryan, he's like the James Bond, right? He's trying to find the terrorists, right? Find the bad guys, trying to come against America, America's freedom. But they had a movie where I think Affleck, he played Jack Ryan in one movie. It was a movie with Morgan Freeman called The Sum of All Fears. Right? This movie, Sum of All Fears, that's what they were talking about. This whole Sum of All Fears was events leading up to a hot, not just a Cold War, but a hot nuclear war against Russia. Right? It's kind of the premise behind the movie. That's what they called it, which is kind of funny because we know in the prophecy that's coming. Right? The Sum of All Fears is going to come, but it's funny because that's the beginning of the fears because it's going to get even worse than that. You thought Russia was bad, right? You guys are going to war. The real war is going to kick off after World War III when Christ comes with the host, right? So they called a fight with Russia being the sum of all fears, but really, that's just the beginning. Because we know what the prophecy says. When America and her allies go against Russia and her allies and clash, in the midst of that clashing, the the third woe, World War III, Christ is going to come back in the midst of that. And it says they're going to stop fighting each other and look at Christ and go, get him and get all his hosts, right? I could just see, Esau across the world, right? In their native tongue. Oh my God, it's a humongous nigger in the sky. And he's standing on a damn UFO. What do? Shoot him down, right? When you got a cheesy little, shotgun, for your house, or you got, high impact weapons. You're part of the U.S. Air Force. You got high impact weapons, right? Energy weapons. They're gonna bring out all their big guns. Because remember this, we just read, by the sword you shall live. But the battle's gonna be over in an hour, so
That's deep.
we kind of know who wins that battle, but that's what we have to look forward to. And get this verse too, to show the sword is used for killing also. In this verse, for those that have eyes that see, ears to hear, and heart to understand, you can read a verse like this and go, oh, I could see Esau falling right into this based on what the Most High told Isaac to tell him about how he would live. Revelation chapter 13, verse 9 and 10. I can't favor it, but we know Esau's prophecy, and we can read this and see how he fits into it. Revelation 13, chapter verse 9 and 10 just said, come once you have it. It's Revelations 13 and 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear, right? So if you have ears, hear this, right? But more so your spiritual ear. Because we go out there and preach all the time, but it doesn't mean you're going to hear what's being said. Really understand it. It says in verse 10, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Right? So we know who led us into captivity, just as an example. It's saying that they're going to go into captivity. Not just Esau, but all the nations. But then check out this next part. He that killeth with the sword. So showing you what? The sword is used for division, like we read in Matthew and Luke, but it's also used for killing. Here's proof, in case we were wondering. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Right? So they come with killing, right? Different means. Because we know what Esau, they're clever, right? They're clever. They're a cunning hunter, right? So they don't just use the sword, they use all different types of weapons. Some physical weapons, some mental weapons, right? He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Then it says, here is the patience and the faith of the saints, right? So this is what we have to look forward to. This is our patience, this is our faith, which are fruits of the Spirit. So we're going to be tested on these things because you have a lot of brothers and sisters that are what? Coming to truth and going out because they don't have patience. They don't have faith. They're not waiting on the Lord. They want to take things into their own hands, right? They want things to happen on their watch, right? But to be called one of the saints, you're going to have patience. You're going to have faith, among other fruits of the Spirit. If you're hoping to make it, yeah. Kind of makes me think of the Spook Who Sat by the Door movie. I always joke around with the elder. That's one of his favorites, where he's talking to one of his foot soldiers, the main character. And he's like real fair complected. He can pass for white, but you listen to him talk. His character is very much Israel, even though he can pass for white. And he said, "Don't give me that jive." He's like, I'm black. My mama's black. My daddy's black. He said, when I go to the grave, they're going to say that I'm black. That's going to be, how I'm going to be remembered, regardless of how I look. And then he's talking about, yeah, man, I can't wait to, give it to these white folks. And that's when the main character, he kind of grabbed him by the shoulders and said, this thing ain't about kill white folks. He said, that's the only reason why you're here, part of this movement. He said, you're not going to last. He said, this is bigger than them, right? What we're trying to do, right? It's about freedom. Now, within the context of the movie, okay, it's, it's a carnal example of freedom, right? Being autonomous. We know with the truth, It's that and a whole lot more, right? It's the truth that makes us free. It's our spiritual freedom, right? Because what will it profit a man? You gain the whole world, right? You fight your enemies physically and dominate them. But if you don't have your soul, what's it matter, right? Because that's the key prize to claim. So we can't have a hope of taking over the world physically unless we get our souls right. And that's where the test comes in. Because a lot of men are going to leave the truth. They're going to want to join the new Black Panther Party or the Not Effing Around Coalition and these other groups that are out here, right? That, are attractive. They say, yeah, we give it to the so-called white man, right? But we do it on our own terms. We're not calling upon some God in the sky that we can't see, right? We're taking action and doing it ourselves. You had that same ass spirit even back then during Christ's time, right? They said, we're going to give it to those Romans. We're going to show them. We're going to use guerrilla tactics, right? We're going to use different strategies. But once again, if it's not of the Lord, that thing's going to come to naught. It was just as true then as it is now. But now that's Esau. But now, what about one of Esau's enemies? Ishmael, right? Another Hebrew nation, right? Not the Hebrew Israelites, not the Hebrew Edomites, the despised of God, but a blessed nation nonetheless. But now Esau's got all types of enemies, right? We're his main enemy, but the other nations are his enemies too. Ishmael being one of them. So what's the Most High tell us about Ishmael? Let's go to Genesis chapter 16. Let's see what he told Ishmael's mother, Hagar, Abraham's nursemaid turned concubine. Because Sarah couldn't conceive at first, right? So she said, okay, raise up seed, but through my nursemaid, Hagar. Who you going to her? She was an Egyptian. So Genesis chapter 16. And let's read verse 11. So say, come once you have that. So Genesis chapter 16 and verse 11. So you read above, it's the Most High having a conversation with Hagar, right? Who was cast out at this point by Sarah, right? Because she was mocking, and Sarah said, you can step, because she was like, she was kind of lifted up like, oh, I was able to get pregnant and you couldn't, haha, right? But we know the Most High, he would still open her womb eventually. And that's where the covenant would be placed. But what's he have to say for Hagar, right? Who's now conceived Abraham's seed. It says, Genesis 16:11, it says, and the angel of Yahweh said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh hath heard thy afflictions. So she's telling her, name this son of yours Ishmael, right? Give him this name, which in the Hebrew, which is kind of funny, right? Because they, a lot of our brothers who are into Islam, right? Which is a religion, founded by the Arabs, which they're really not Arab. Their name actually is Ishmael. That's where they come from, right? The so-called Arabs. They'll say, oh, the Arabic is, is the oldest language, is God's language. But how is that when the father of the Arabs had a Hebrew name? And his father was a Hebrew. How is Arab the oldest language? Make it make sense. And those that came before Abraham had Hebrew names because they came from Eber, the man himself named Eber. So it shows you that Hebrew has to be older, right, than all other languages. Anyway, Ishmael, Yahshemai Allah, which literally means Yahweh has heard. That's why it says, Yahweh have heard thy affliction. But now, what are his qualities? It says in verse 12, he shall be a wild man. See that? It says his hand will be against every man. That's why we got, because before Esau, it was the Russians, right? Before the Russians, it was the British. And that's just one family. But then you have the other families, right? Ishmael, anytime Esau's to deal with Ishmael, whether it's in Afghanistan or if it's in, Saudi Arabia or Egypt, right? It's like it's always an issue when it comes to Ishmael and his descendants, because we're reading here, it says he will be a wild man, right? Because how are they able to take their religion, supposed to be a religion of peace, right? And then they were able to mobilize it, right? Or make it create a splinter of Islam called the Wahhabis. That's you get these, the whole suicide bomber thing and the whole, I'm going to get 72 virgins if I blow myself up and take as many with me as I can, right? And yell out, Allah is great, like they do, and they boom, blow themselves up, right? So that's in their spirit. So when people follow them and follow their belief system, they take on that spirit too. You'll see Israel, right, that's following the religion of Islam or under Islam, right, when it comes to how they set their business up and all that, according to their laws and customs. Israel take on that same wild spirit too, right? But that's them, right? We have our own spirit when we deal with the truth and deal with the true and living God. So yeah, it says he'll be a wild man. It says, and his hand it shall be against every man. So he's only going to what? Get down with his own people in the end. That's why we see, even though they were there in Afghanistan for so long, right? 20 years. The minute they step out, Ishmael said, perfect. Time to take it back over. Claim it as our own again, right? So they're always a problem. Going back to, you guys might remember the head of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, right? I think he was like Time Magazine Man of the Year, like in the 60s or something. But he has that famous quote, right? Where he tells the Israelis, the fake Jews, he said, you'll never have peace in this land, right? Because you left black and came back white, right? So Ishmael's always been a problem for Esau, right? He can deal with them up to a certain extent. When things go south, they fend for themselves, right? That they're not ones to, kneel and kiss the ring like that. Even when they do, it's only for a short period of time. So that's why Ishmael gives them so much problems, and it's even rocky, even though he's still kind of somewhat having a relationship, it's definitely gotten rocky with the House of Saud and, the House of Bush and other connected families of Esau, where they're like, look, you keep hurting the oil, like it says in Revelation. And that's really caused us to take a hit. Like, how long is this going to last? Like, I know you're trying to destabilize other countries, but you're supposed to be, hooked up with us. We're supposed to be in league together, right? As far as the Saudis, that particular family, those particular families of Ishmael. So yeah, they shall be a wild man. It says, and their hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. It says, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. So you look at their behavior, right? You see how they operate when it comes to business, when it comes to, domestic situations, right? You come against them and theirs, right? They're ready to go to war with you, right? Like, you'll see, Israel in a wicked frame of mind. They'll go into the Arab store, get some food, start yelling at the guy in the back, and then you see Ishmael. They'll come from behind the glass, right? Like Moab, Moab in the ghetto, they'll just stay behind the glass, just cuss you out, right? They say, hey, just give me money and go, right? Ishmael, they'll come from behind the counter and get in Israel's face and check them, right? They don't care, right? So that's that wild spirit they got, right? To even come and step at us when the situation arises. So that's how the Most High made them. And then I like this too, because it shows how the Most High, even though Esau thinks they're using them to start a war, it's really in the hand of the Most High. And how when it comes to the use of terror, right? How terror will end up becoming a weapon that Esau will try to wield, kind of like you try to start a fire to burn something, but then the fire can burn you. Terror is going to burn them, right? And when it comes to Ishmael, they're the ones that actually can, strike that fear, even in a place like America, right? Where everyone's like, oh man, we're so afraid. So they can hit America and at the core of what makes it strong, right? Which is its perception or its perceived idea of being at peace, or being safe, dwelling safely, dwelling lavishly. Ishmael is the one that's being used to shake things up. So the same way the archer hits its mark, that's how the Most High is using Ishmael to shake things up. And evidence for that, go to Genesis 21. Genesis 21. I'll start from 14. Just say, come what you have. So 21 and 14 reads, and Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Right? This is after Isaac was born, right? And it was seen that they weren't going to stay, but they were going to be cast forth. But remember, when you read other places, it says they will still be blessed, but this time, Hagar is not certain, right? What's going to be her future, the future of her and her son, right? It says, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shoot, right? Like a distance you could shoot an arrow, right? We can go up and land. It says, for she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept, right? Because she thought this was going to be it for her and her son. 17, and God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is, right? So the Most High comes to everybody, even other nations, right? Because he has a role for everybody to play. 18, arise, lift up the lad and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation, right? Because we told Abraham that way back in chapter 17, right? He's going to be a blessed nation, but still his covenant is going to be with Isaac. It just says that back in Genesis 17, right? So what's going to be of Ishmael? Let's find out. 19, and power opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. You see that? So it's not ironic that, we see Ishmael still heavy in Egypt. Even though they're Ishmaelites, but they're in Egypt, because on their mom's side, they're actually native Egyptians, but they're Ishmaelites. So it's not ironic that you would see Ishmael in that region in North Africa, even to this day, right? In heavy numbers. But it says that he would become an archer, right? So just an example of him just like an archer being able to hit the mark, we see Most High using Ishmael as the archer to strike terror and fear in the hearts and minds of America as a personality and as a country as a whole, right? So he's an archer and he's a wild man. You look at those characteristics, we see how that plays out, not just for the boy at this point, but how it will play out for him as a nation. And we just see more evidence of that with this whole Afghanistan situation. But not just them, but the other countries where Ishmael's at too. So that's why I said, you understand the nations, how the Most High blessed the nations, you'll see how they stand out on their own and how they can even pose as rivals to the current power base, which is, Esau. Because the other nations didn't just disappear; they're still here too. They're just jockeying for power their own way. Okay, so that's all we'll read on that. We'll stop there. But those are some key verses that we read about Esau, knowing who he is, and as well as Ishmael when it comes to how they fight, the way they go to war. So you got the the cunning hunter / living by the sword when it comes to Esau, and you got Ishmael, the wild man who sticks with his own, who's the archer. So look at those characteristics that they had as young boys, right? And as men. You can see how those things with trace will follow down to, war between nations, right? It goes all the way back to how they were when they were just a man. And you can do this for all the different nations, right? You see their past, and you go into their past in the scriptures, just like, oh, that's why they say this like that. That's why they do this like this, And no other book can do that. Even when it comes to Ishmael, you ask these same kind of questions. What does the Quran have to say about that? I don't know. Scratch their head. But the Bible got history about your people and why you guys are the way that you are, why y'all so wild like that, and why you guys could just hop on a false branch of a false, religion of Islam, the Wahhabist faith, and just, go all out and just kill yourself for the 72 virgins. Because that's a problem for Esau, right? It's like, man, how do we bribe guys like this? These guys are ready to put their lives on the line, right? For, their own, their God, or for their own cause. It's not so much for the God, it's more so that the Most High made their spirit to be wild like that. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. That's what we're up against. But we'll stop there. But we'll say Shar Chadash, or Happy New Moon. Both I will. Everybody was edified. Like I said, sorry we started so late. Hope everybody was edified with the new moon verses, and then just the verses we covered as it pertains to Esau and as it pertains to Ishmael. We'll look at their origins in the verses that we read, and then see how it parallels to what they're doing right now and the different qualities that they have. Let me get this one more. Since I was talking about them being used like an archer, like an arrow to the mark, just to show that terror, Esau trying to wield terror as a weapon, it's going to be used against them, and trying to utilize Ishmael as a means to start war. That even he's not going to be able to control what they do and what comes next. But this is Job chapter 18. Job chapter 18. Sorry. 21. So I read Genesis 21. 14 to 21. And now I'm getting Job 18, verse 11. Right, which reads, terror shall make him afraid on every side. You read above us, it's referring to the wicked. He shall drive him to his feet. So they're going to try to wield fire, just like they try to wield terror, right? And say, it's mine. I'm going to use it to burn down, to destroy, to shake up, to use as a means of control. Like we saw after 9/11, right? Oh, look out for Ishmael, right? Watch them closely. See if they got, bombs on them, right? To where anytime Ishmael enters the room, it's like kind of like how they make fun of us. Anytime they show up, it's just like, oh, somebody pat him down. Somebody check his shoes, right? And it's just like, more likely than not, they're not gonna have like bombs on them. That's kind of the stigma that they had now, right? They're like the face of terror, right? That's how Esau tries to cast them. But Mosiah is saying, yeah, you guys try to use terror like it's yours. I'm gonna show you guys real terror, right? I'm gonna flip it back on you. It says it shall drive him to his feet. Then it says I skipped. No, verse 12. His strength shall be hunger bitten, and destruction shall be ready at his sides. Esau is going to fall trying to use these things like they're his. Then it says, it shall devour the strength of his skin, even the firstborn of death shall devour his strength. So even the strength of his skin. So he trying to flex out there, create this lie saying that, yeah, because of your lack of melanin, right? your so-called white supremacy, right? That thing is getting unraveled even by your own scholars. They're showing how it's illogical. It's not based on any type of logical reason, right? It's just an aesthetic. It's just an aesthetic, and you what? Lying, cheating, and stealing to keep wealth in the family, and using the accumulated wealth to what? Buy support, buy strength, buy military, buy other governments, keep them in debt to maintain control. That's how you support this farce of so-called white supremacy. So it says this thing's going to devour even that. Then it says in verse 14, his confidence shall be rooted out of his tabernacle, and it shall bring him to the king of terrors. See that? So you open your tabernacle, right? You got this, protection. You got this thing you built up to keep all the nations afraid of you. It says it's going to end up delivering you to the king of terrors, meaning you thought this was bad. Now look what the Most High has for you. Now you got Christ and the host to deal with in the sky. Well, you want to run away? You want to go down under the water, right? I got the Leviathan down there waiting for you. So you guys want to use terror like it's yours. You guys ain't seen terror yet, right? That's what it is saying. 15, it shall dwell in his tabernacle because it is none of his, because it's all stolen, right? Everywhere he goes, he says, oh, it's mine. Puts the flag down. It says, brimstone shall be scattered upon his habitation. Then it says, his root shall be dried from beneath, and above shall his branch be cut off, etc., etc. You can read the rest, but you guys get the idea. So yeah, that's what he has to look forward to. Him trying to use terror like it's his own. Him trying to control the weather, right? With his different technology and say, oh, I did that. To where people see storms and the first thing they say is, oh, top secret, so-called white man, he got the HAARP machine. You don't realize while they had that, who gave them the inspiration to even build it? The Most High. The Most High created the ways to destroy. So your fear is in the wrong place. You shouldn't be fearing them. What's that say? So what verse you getting? Nice and loud?
Psalm 83, verse 15.
Okay, got it.
Verse 15. 83 and verse 15. And so prosecute them.
That's persecute.
Persecute them with tempest and will make them afraid with thy storm.
Con. So Psalms 83 and 15. Anything else you want to say on that, or just want to read that?
Well, I want to read, let you know that you see this stuff is happening, and you know it's coming from the Most High, making them afraid. These people, they had. I was listening on the internet earlier. It was a school in that part of not Colorado, but we get this one girl where the trailer here.
Okay. Oklahoma.
They said it was a school and what happened there it was like a thunderstorm, big storm came over,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid and the people thought they was cool. What happened? A pipe busted, and the kids ended up drowning in the school.
Yikes. Wow.
Drowning in the school. Pipe busted in the building. Pipes busted, and water came down. They couldn't get out. They ended up drowning in the school.
Wow, that's crazy. Nowhere safe.
We're safe.
And it's kind of interesting too here in Philly. You see the storms Now, just for what I saw, but it seemed like it. Not to say Israel didn't feel the effects, but it seemed like when it came to the real damage and destruction was in their part of town. It was where Esau was at. That's where you see a lot of the floods taking place here. And like the people that were either missing or found dead, few in number, they were out and where Esau's at. So I just think that's kind of interesting. You'll hear about us dying, due to like domestic stuff, right? Or like stuff in the community. This guy had a problem with this guy. What the curse is saying. When it comes to the storms, it seemed like he tended to have them things reserved, especially for. Yeah. Like I said, not to say we can't get touched too. But as far as getting killed, utterly killed, we'll get displaced by the storm. But as far as being utterly killed, you'll see them, making the headlines. Like I said, that's why I didn't want to make a blanket statement because we saw it happen to our people during Katrina. You saw what happened with us during Katrina, right? Where the Most High, visited our people down there. All the wickedness that's been going on in Louisiana, and still going on, even if they rebuilt. Yeah, but that's America. And that's yeah. Oh, prime real estate. Oh, you raise the property value up. Oh, okay. Yeah, have fun with that. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I'm winning. And it's so wicked. That's like a dream come true for them, right? They don't have to, say eminent domain and force the people out. That makes them look bad. But the storm comes in, just clears it out. That's like real estate developers, that's like, manna from heaven. Oh, yes. Right? Now, I don't look like the bad guy by evicting, old so-called black men, old so-called black women from their property, right? Because I let the storm take care of that. And then I can come in, I got the money, I can rebuild it as I see fit, right? And I can look like the hero. But really, you just wanted the land for yourself. And now you could take it without prejudice. Yep, they are true to form, just as the other nations are. Come. So with that, once again, we'll say Ashar Kadash and Dawada for everybody who hung on with us. I know some of you guys had to, you told me you had to dial out early because, you had to get some sleep and stuff like that, which I totally understand. But definitely enjoy the new moon. Hopefully you're able to take off from now till sundown. If not, just apply grace. Try to meditate on the Most High's commandments, the new moon, other scriptures to keep the day as holy as you can. And Most High's will talk to everybody tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. for the class. And what I'll do is, folks in the text group, I'll just post the new number. It's not going to be this week, but I think the following week. That's when the dial-in number will be different. Sister posted it already, but I'll just do just. I'm not looking at it now, but I think it's in this book. But either way, it's in the group, and I'll you don't have to say it right now. I'll just send it out to the group anyway. Before I do those classes, once it actually happens. So you'll see it. Come. Just as a reminder, like I said, it's already in the group chat, but I'll just repost it, once the number actually changes. But yeah. So definitely enjoy your day, enjoy the feast. Most High's will talk to everybody in the class tomorrow evening, but that will do the closing prayers. So Shar Shabbat, and let's do the closing prayers. Can you get the blinds, Papa Goshen? Blinds. Can you get the blinds, Papa Goshen? Wakati Yahweh, Bashim Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Tanana, Paria, Gapan, Tuara Aman. La Yahweh, Bashim Yahweh Shai, Af, Yashrala. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Paniwa, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shemai, Lanawa, Aithad, Yemyen, Aithad, Shalak, Micah Allah, Waha'alahayim, Tazwadakim, La, Shemar Ayel, Barak, Rapah, Magan, Wachaziak, Banya, Yasha Allah, Washalak, Lanawa, Rabiim, Kakama, Rabiim, Da'if, Rabiim, Bayanad, Rabiim, Sabalanwath, Rabiim, Amawan, Rabiim, Aqua, Rabiim, Ahabiim, Rabiim, Haganad, Rachanaya, Wasalak, Ko, Katsayanawa, La Akim, Wa Akiwath, Wayasha'ala, Tamyad, Waiwalam, Ba'asham, Yahawashai, the water, Amen. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'ala, Wabath Yasaparim, Shema, Yasharala, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. All right, prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Ba'asham, Adawanya, Yahawashai, Babakushai, Barak, Ma'akal, Yanawa, Shatayawath, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakara, Yanawa, Sachad, Hachadash, Ba'asham, Yahawashai, the water. Amen. All right, so with that we'll say Shak Hadash, Walayla Tawab. Have a blessed night and rest of the new moon. And most of us will talk to everybody in the Tuesday class tomorrow sundown. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.